Today, the TBI confirmed that their agents, along with the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, continue to investigate what happened to Summer. They say that last week, their agents, along with detectives, were at a location in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road in Greenville, following up on a lead in the case. That's about 9.5 miles from the Wells family home on Ben Hill Road via State Route 347. Now, we followed up with the TBI asking if they could provide details about the nature of the tip, if anything substantiated from it, and how long it had been since their agents followed up on a lead like this in the field.
That's the latest development in the search for missing Tennessee tot Summer Wells, but I wouldn't get my hopes up. I don't think the TBI is suited to solve this case. So in today's video, let's watch an interview with their assistant director, and I'll show you why. I'm Deception Detective, an attorney trained in statement analysis. This channel exposes lies and manipulation, so if that's your thing, hit subscribe. For early access to new videos, over 60 exclusive videos, and other cool perks, consider becoming a channel member. Link in description. If you're watching this video, I assume you're at least familiar with the disappearance of Summer Wells from her rural Tennessee home. It's one of my most popular series on YouTube. Still, you might not be up to date with the latest twists and turns in the investigation. So before we grab our deception decks and analyze the TBI assistant director, here's the rest of that update.
TBI and FBI has searched an area this past week in the continued search for Summer Wells. It's our breaking news tonight.
It's been more than 4 years since Summer Wells was last seen. The then 5-year-old was reported missing from her home in the Beech Creek community in Hawkins County.
There's been no sign of the little girl since, and law enforcement from several agencies have worked countless tips over the years. News Channel 11's Ansley Daniel spoke with TBI, who says the case is far from cold. Ansley?
Yeah, Sarah and Casey, there have been more questions than answers since Summer Wells disappeared from her home in Hawkins County on June 15th of 2021. But today, the TBI confirmed that their agents, along with the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, continue to investigate what happened to Summer. They say that last week, on November 13th, their agents, along with detectives, were at a location in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road in Greenville, following up on a lead in the case. That's about 9.5 miles from the Wells family home on Ben Hill Road via State Route 347. Now, we followed up with the TBI asking if they could provide details about the nature of the tip, if anything substantiated from it, and how long it had been since their agents followed up on a lead like this in the field. The spokesperson couldn't tell us those details, but said that agents follow up on leads as they come in, and the investigation remains active and ongoing. Now, this is the first update outside of law enforcement sharing age-progressed photos and ensuring the case is not cold and that they haven't forgotten about Summer. We also reached out to the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office, Ronnie Lawson, and have yet to hear back from him or his office. It's important to note, though, that there is still an active Amber Alert for Summer, and no one has been arrested or charged in connection to her disappearance.
So that's the latest, but is the tip credible? Can the TBI make the most of it? Can it crack the case? If it did crack the case, would it automatically clear Summer Wells' parents of any wrongdoing? If you've binge watched my entire series about this case, you'll already know I'm skeptical about all those things. I doubt this tip is any more credible than the thousands of others the TBI has received. I doubt the TBI can make the most of this lead, even if it is good. And I doubt that it would clear the parents, even if it led to Summer being on someone else's property. And I know that last part might sound strange if you don't know my theory of this case, but don't worry, I'll recap it the next time I pause, because Assistant Director Josh Melton gets straight into that at the start of his interview. So without further ado, let's listen.
We don't have the evidence in this case to know for sure whether or not Summer was abducted or whether or not she walked away from her home and became lost. It's really important to us to not focus all of our efforts on just one of those two. We think that the only way we'll be successful in finding Summer is to continue to walk down both of those investigative paths to ensure that we don't become focused on one area alone and miss something that's crucially important. I would say this case has not gone cold. A cold case is typically framed up as a case where there are no tips or leads that are coming in and there are no investigative efforts that are happening because there is no place to travel with the investigation. I would say in this case, thanks to the public, we've continued to have tips and leads that have come in that agents have been able to follow up on continuously. And the agents have worked tirelessly when tips and leads weren't coming in to try to find ways to investigate when typically people would lay down their effort. It has been a great partnership between the community and law enforcement to not let this case sit and go sterile.
First of all, I congratulate the TBI on not considering Summer's case cold and continuing to work it. I also acknowledge that I have the luxury of just giving my opinion about whether or not I think someone's innocent or guilty without having to worry about proving it beyond a reasonable doubt in court, unlike the TBI. All that said, I'm not thrilled about them congratulating themselves for considering a grand total of 2 theories, abduction or wandering off, because that means they're interpreting every tip they get, even this most recent one, through those 2 narrow filters. And while that normally wouldn't be too big of a problem, the issue is the evidence in this case doesn't support such extreme tunnel vision. For example, I think something completely different happened to Summer. In fact, it's a theory I don't have about any other case we've analyzed on the channel. So here's the recap of my theory from an earlier video in this series where I analyzed Summer's parents on Dr. Phil.
There's trafficking that goes on.
Yeah.
People take
Yeah.
children, and I hate to even say this because it's such a horrible thing to think about, but they take children and they sell them. They sell them into all different kinds of different lives, whether it's sex trade, slave trade, different things. That happens here in LA, it happens there.
What Dr. Phil is saying here is one of the theories we have in this case. So if you followed this series since my first video, we've come to a few theories of what could have happened to Summer, and they are among the most extreme and bizarre theories on the channel, just because this whole situation is extremely bizarre. And it's bizarre based on nothing but the parents' own words. So be mindful when I say that what Dr. Phil says about them potentially selling Summer or allowing someone to take her, someone they know to take her in order to sell her. I don't come to that conclusion lightly. It is a possibility simply because the parents themselves have spoken in a way that allows it to be a possibility, and have even said themselves in other interviews that it is a possibility. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but that's my theory of the case based on the parents' own words and the evidence available to us. If you want to see how we got there, I'll link my playlist down below and you can binge watch that next. For the purposes of this video, here's the 2 main takeaways. If I'm right about this, the new tip wouldn't necessarily clear Summer's parents of any wrongdoing, even if it led to her being discovered on a stranger's property, because Don and Candace Wells, Summer's parents, could have been involved in how she arrived there. Second, the TBI will continue struggling to solve this case if they're primed to only see it as a simple stranger abduction or child wandering off and getting lost. But our differing theories aren't the only issue I have with the TBI's approach to this investigation. A far bigger one is coming up. See if you can spot it.
Many people have speculated what they think has happened in this case. The difficult part of the speculation is that if we as investigators speculate and focus our efforts in one direction, we're making a huge mistake. We have to make sure that we're being completely comprehensive as we investigate. And being focused in one direction is a tragedy for an investigation. So until we find evidence that points us in a direction that we know is the right direction, we'll continue to be comprehensive. We'll continue to explore every option that can be out there, and we would continue to ask for the public's help in doing so. Typically, we have a couple of agents assigned to an investigation, and that's been enough. We've had over 6,500 leads, tips and leads come in on this case. Those have all been reviewed. They've been worked. We continue to get those, and it is a monstrous task, but it's one that's not overwhelmed us. We have been strategic in the way that we've handled this investigation. We have some of our most talented agents assigned to this case, some of our most talented intelligence analysts from the Bureau assigned to this case. We have brought in subject matter experts within TBI from across the state to assist in this investigation. We have thrown everything that we know to throw at this case, and we haven't had the answers that we need yet. We know we'll get them, but we don't have them today. When I see the picture of Summer Wells, I see my daughter. And I can tell you that if my daughter was missing, I would sure hope that somebody was looking for her every day. And it brings me concern and satisfaction, really, the concern that we don't have the answers, the satisfaction of knowing that we have the best agents at TBI that are working on this case in connection with other local law enforcement and federal agencies who are doing their best. And if my daughter was missing, all of the people that are working on this case are the people who I would choose to work on a case if my daughter was missing.
Once again, I commend the TBI for their effort and all the resources they're putting into this search, but none of that matters if they're focusing on two theories that aren't correct. And what's worse than the tunnel vision itself is the lack of self-awareness about it, which is what jumped out to me in this interview. They're patting themselves on the back for not just focusing on one theory, but focusing on two, when in reality, they should be focusing on dozens of theories. And because neither of the theories involves foul play by the parents, I don't think they're using every resource in the best way possible. In fact, I think YouTubers are going harder on the parents than the actual TBI. I'll link my analysis of one of my favorite YouTuber interviews of Don Wells on the end card. If you want to continue this series, let me know by liking, commenting, and sharing. Until next time, stay true.